On Bridge City News, a local pharmacist received special recognition for his work. Now, a more efficient way of reporting crime. And council voted to keep Lethbridge EMS in our city.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Good evening, I'm LAURICE Alexander. Thank you for joining us. Vishal Sakadia, pharmacist and owner of the Medicine Shop Pharmacy, received a welcome gift this morning. We have his first reactions to receiving this special recognition and what's next for his pharmacy.
I'm thankful, grateful, amazed. Surprised this morning with this letter. Well, I was just doing my part, just to be a part of community, but I was not expecting this letter for sure. It certainly gave me encouragement to work harder for sure. 5 years ago, I came to Lethbridge and literally we just had 7 bags. Lethbridge gave us everything what we, even beyond our expectations. And we were just doing our part, me and my family, and we are so thankful, so grateful for this honor. Can't express it. It is amazing, and we are still here, and also now with this COVID testing, as Dr. Dina Hinshaw expressed that every teachers are recommended. We actually gave our first preference to school staff. So whenever the school staff gives us a call, we gave them a preference for the booking for sure for anybody beside anybody else.
As COVID-19 numbers continue to fluctuate in our province, a community organization is helping keep the vulnerable of our society connected to family and loved ones. Video journalist Naveen Day has the story.
With concerns of COVID-19 affecting vulnerable seniors, care facilities are taking extra precaution when it comes to visitation. This includes screening, risk assessment, continuous masking, and temperature checks, all before the visitor is sent directly to the resident suites. CEO of the Green Acres Foundation, Donna Kozlovi, says the process of visitation can still be problematic.
Unfortunately, because they have to be continuously masked, at times it's difficult for the residents to understand because the masking does muffle the voices a little bit.
But thanks to a donation from the Rotary Club of Lethbridge, residents at the Green Acres Lodges are staying connected with their loved ones.
The Rotary Club of Lethbridge, we donated $10,000 to go towards iPads. And being a person who's very close to my grandparents, I know that having that connection between grandparents and family is such a huge part of mental health for residences in such facilities. And so for us to give that money is just means so much to us as an organization and us as a community to participate in that.
We are certainly endeavoring to look at anything to do with seniors, to do with mums and kids, to do with people that have mental health challenges, to people that have substance abuse disorders. What can we do to assist in our community? How can we do, especially in our new world that we have right now?
One resident of Green Acres says the use of technology to keep in contact is a no-brainer.
I've had no trouble keeping in touch with my family, which I'm very pleased about. And I think anybody that's in here, if they're not satisfied with the line of communication that's available to you, there's something wrong with you.
For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
The province reported that 1,041 healthcare workers have been infected with COVID-19. Lethbridge City Council voted to keep Lethbridge EMS here in our city as opposed to outsourcing it to AHS dispatch centers currently operating in Calgary, Edmonton, and Grand Prairie. Councillors say having the service here would save time and lives. BCN chatted with the Acting Director of Community Services. Greg Adair says there is a process a 911 call has to go through when AHS takes over.
One of the challenges we're going to have to overcome is when somebody calls 911 and the question will be asked, do you need police, fire, or an ambulance? If they say ambulance, that call will then be routed to Calgary. Calgary will then take the information they require and send out the ambulance. Where it becomes somewhat problematic is when that caller, who is now talking to a dispatcher in Calgary, says, I need or I need an ambulance, and the ambulance needs to be attached to a medical first response or one of our fire apparatus responding to aid in the medical emergency, that dispatcher in Calgary will then need to send the call back to Lethbridge, which of course increases the time of the call, the processing, which will mean we do anticipate this will create delays for that medical first response to respond out the door.
The province says it would save around $6 million annually by going through a centralized dispatch center. Overdose deaths are on the rise in Lethbridge, according to staff at the Streets Alive mission. As Ainsley O'Reilly explains, the group shared how they are passionate about recovery and putting a face to the city's most vulnerable.
Streets Alive says they are seeing one overdose death every 3 days. The organization hypothesizes that border closure has resulted in dirty drugs on the street.
Well, it's killing them, number one. It's been a real challenge lately because we keep a board of people that we minister to or see on a daily basis, and we've been erasing a lot of names from that board, and that's wrenching our hearts.
These dirty drugs are lethal, and addicts are often volatile and non-responsive, not thinking about recovery. Streets Alive's mantra is recovery is real, hoping to bring forth that prospect.
There is another alternative to this life, and we just really look forward to that moment when they're kind of saying, I think I'm ready.
We have that passion for recovery that helps us to really push a little bit harder, I think, to help people to access the resources that are available.
And for those who don't think it's possible, the nonprofit says it takes hard work and hope.
I don't just believe that recovery is real, I know it's real because I'm living proof.
About a month ago, the government of Alberta announced that they'd be investing $25 million to 5 new recovery centers. These recovery communities will have about 400 treatment beds. Individuals can stay anywhere between 3 months and 1 year, a model that's already similar to one developed by Streets Alive. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
The RCMP recently implemented a virtual way of reporting crime. If you're a victim of crime under $5,000, you can now report it online.
There's a number of benefits for online reporting. One, it encourages people to report more. If people are busy, they don't have a time during office hours to call, or they don't want to bother an officer when they think they're busy, doing online reporting is simple and easy and a great way of getting through to us. It'll reduce at the detachment level our calls for service, so our members can maybe concentrate on some of the more higher priority calls, and also will help our support staff to do things like security clearances and criminal record checks and that kind of stuff.
Some kids save their allowance to purchase things on their own. Others take on employment or do odd jobs. In this next story, video journalist Naveen Day shares with us the story of a Piikani First Nation boy who got cracking on another idea.
Not only does he get an early start to the day, but an early start at entrepreneurship. Meet 7-year-old ODIN Yellowwings of the Piikani First Nation. He runs a business raising chickens and selling their eggs.
When I got my chickens, I felt like just doing more than having chickens and feeding them. And when the chickens started laying the eggs, I decided to start selling the eggs to make money.
Odin is an avid gamer, and he uses the proceeds from his sales to purchase video game add-ons. Shortly after his sales increased, he caught the attention of the Piikani First Nation.
It's pretty cool because, well, he's only 7 years old and he's already got his own income. He's got his own little business going, and right now he's in the process of getting a grant from, I think it's the nation here, to build him a bigger chicken coop. And me and my dad are going to start working on that once we get all the prices, and he's going to get more chickens, and then he'll be able to expand a little bit more.
Yellowwings tells his son that if he keeps going the way he is, he can turn this into a permanent business. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Recapping one of our top news stories, Vishal Sakadia, pharmacist and owner of the Medicine Shop Pharmacy, received a special gift this morning. look at weekend weather. Another hot and sunny day in the Windy City. Tonight, just a few clouds and a low of 12. Tomorrow will be a scorcher with a high of 36 and mix of sun and cloud. A recent report revealed that the Canadian deficit is $343 billion and our debt is now over $1 trillion. Federal Conservative candidate Derek Sloan says he has a plan to fix it. He will also talk about how his faith plays a role as a politician. That interview is coming up next.
The Conservative Party of Canada will be choosing its new leader this fall at the end of August. The 4 candidates running to replace Andrew Scheer are Peter MacKay, Erin O'Toole, Leslyn Lewis, and our next guest, Derek Sloan. Derek is a current Conservative MP who was elected to represent the ridings of Hastings, Lennox, and Addington in Ontario in the 2019 federal election. Derek, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you for having me.
Now, first of all, why do you think you're the best candidate for the job?
Well, we have a range of candidates in this race, but I'm the only one who stands for genuinely conservative policies and ideas across the entire spectrum. I will never compromise on those principles when confronted with Liberal Party attacks. Just to give you a few examples, I'm the only candidate that's pledged to defund the World Health Organization, the only candidate that's pledged to getting Canada out of the Paris Agreement. I'm very strong on national sovereignty issues, and I'm the only person who has an immigration plan, a plan to reduce immigration and make sure that our immigration plan works for Canada. I'm very strong on free speech issues. I've been very clear on bills like Bill C-16 that can compel you to talk about other genders that you may not believe in or agree with. And I'm not going to apologize for those values. And I think most people would agree I've been the strongest on those issues that I've mentioned.
Now, speaking of bills, how about C-69 here in Alberta? We care a lot about our oil and gas sector. And Jason Kennedy would like to see it scrapped. But I mean, it's a federal issue. So what would you do about C-69 and help support our energy sector?
That's right. So I'm definitely against Bill C-69 and Bill C-48. But being the only candidate that's against the Paris Agreement, really scrapping those 2 bills isn't enough. We have to get out of the Paris Agreement. If we don't, it'll bring in some other regulation or some other carbon pricing in some way.
Now, many political pundits, Derek, are referring to MacKay and O'Toole as the red Tories and you and Leslyn Lewis as the true blue candidates, as in you're socially and fiscally conservative. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly socially and fiscally conservative in all ways. That's a true statement.
Now, the LGBTQ2+ community seems to always put a lot of pressure on all political leaders to march in their annual Gay Pride Parade. Will you be willing to do so should you become the next leader of the CPC?
So it's interesting that this race has made whether or not you'd march in a Pride Parade a litmus test. And if that's the question that we have to answer, I've been very clear on that from the beginning. I'm not interested in marching in a parade like that. I mean, it's a free country. If other people want to do it, that's great. But I won't be marching as a leader, and I've been very clear on that from the beginning, unlike some of the other candidates.
Now, you are the first Seventh-day Adventist ever elected to the House of Commons, and you really haven't shied away from your faith very much. Let's flesh that out a little bit, Derek, and how God plays a major role in your decision-making, and how you lean on him for strength, wisdom, and discernment.
Yeah, I believe that God has a plan for everybody, and I believe that if we follow God in all things, He will take us to places that we may not have expected to go. And I feel called in this position. I feel called to enter politics to serve the country and to make it a place where everybody can prosper. And I certainly everything I do with an eye to believing I'll have to answer to God for it at the end of the day. So that's something that's integral to my life.
Now, Derek, let's say you become the next leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and possibly Canada's next Prime Minister. Would you allow MPs within your party, your rank and file, to vote with their hearts and conscience? In other words, those who maybe support abortion and gay rights?
Yeah, so you know what? I believe that each MP is accountable to the people that elect them, and I believe that they need to make the decisions that they feel are best. And sometimes I may disagree with those, but I don't believe in a top-down structure that twists people's arms. I think a lot of socially conservative people like myself have been concerned about similar things, and I don't think it would be fair to apply the same pressure to others. So I'm certainly in favor of free votes in Parliament.
Would you reopen the abortion debate?
Well, I have a pro-life plan that addresses a lot of different things in relation to abortion. And it's funny. There's a lot of sort of discussion about whether or not that we should do that, but we've never really had an abortion debate. We had some laws that were struck down. We tried to come back with some other laws, and we never did. We're one of the only countries in the entire world that doesn't have any laws in relation to abortion, and it creates a legal vacuum. So I think that Parliament is a place to discuss challenging issues, and I haven't shied away from that.
Now, once a vaccine for COVID-19 is found, would you recommend that the drug become mandatory for Canadians or optional?
Well, I certainly am not in favor of mandatory anything when it comes to medical treatments. I believe that people need to have a choice whether or not to choose it. And I've been critical of the fact that Canada is partnering with a company in China, CanSino Biologics, which is related to the Chinese military. I don't think we should be dealing with China at all when it comes to doing anything to do with COVID.
Now, what qualities would you say you have over another believer who's running in this leadership race, Leslyn Lewis? Because I've noticed, on social media, sometimes there's a little bit of going back and forth between you two as true blue conservatives.
Well, yes. Well, I think that, in this race, we need to do our best to distinguish ourselves from others. And I've been clear on the fact that I appreciate Ms. Lewis's stand on social issues. But, we're not the same candidate. And I have certainly gone above and beyond in not only highlighting social conservative issues, but also highlighting issues like the Paris Agreement. Leslyn Lewis, for example, does not want to pull us out of the Paris Agreement. I have an immigration plan that reduces immigration and basically promotes housing and housing affordability in Canada. I've also been clear that we shouldn't be funding the World Health Organization. So there are a variety of, sort of Canadian sovereignty issues that I've highlighted. I have a more robust free speech platform, in my view. It's nothing against the other candidates, but of course, it is incumbent on us to make differences. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not voting for two people; you're voting for one. And I'm trying to share with people the reasons why they should vote for me.
Many people argue that the two top dogs are Peter MacKay and Aaron O'Toole. And Derek, I mean, you're dreaming here. I mean, these guys are well known. They're rock stars there on the Hill. So what is it going to take to defeat these guys and actually win the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada?
Well, I really don't agree that this race is, going to go in a particular direction. With the amount of sort of positive feedback that we've been getting, I firmly believe. I mean, some of the data that's come out says that half of people are undecided. I believe I get hundreds of emails every day that say, you know what, Derek, I don't answer any surveys. I'm voting for you. I think we're going to see an upset in this race. That's my belief.
Now, there's another controversy surrounding Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Derek, and the We Charity scandal. This isn't the first ethics issue involving our Prime Minister. We don't have to look too far back with SNC-Lavalin affair, the Aga Khan trip, not to mention the blackface controversy. Why does it appear that nothing really sticks to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
Well, it's interesting, and part of it is the fact that Canadians are disengaged from politics generally, the average person. I think his time is coming. I mean, we had a perfect storm in the last election, but our Conservative leader at that time wasn't willing to stand on values issues. And unlike some of the other candidates in this race, I know that values issues and Canadian sovereignty issues are a key to expanding and opening up our base. There are so many people who don't even vote because they don't see a moral difference between the Liberals and the Conservatives. And, the Liberals have gone so far when it comes to their, radical gender agenda. They're so pro-abortion. I mean, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, we can all agree there needs to be some rules relating to abortion. And we just refuse as Conservatives over and over to dig in our toes. I know for a fact that there's so many Canadians, new Canadians who hold these family values, and we can expand our base with these people.
What will it take to really defeat the Trudeau Liberals? Now, how will you personally make those inroads in Quebec where there's so many seats to be won?
Well, I was just in Quebec actually touring for a week, and I did two interviews in French, and we did a little search on the Google statistics. And out of the four candidates, two of whom were touring at the time in Quebec, so Peter MacKay and myself, I was getting 60% of all Google searches in the entire province of Quebec. Peter MacKay was 22%, and the other candidates were about 10 or 11. I believe right now, for example, my immigration policy, which is to reduce the number of immigrants and to give provinces control over immigration, Quebecers love that. So, I mean, yes, they are more secular in certain ways, but they have a latent nationalism that we can tap into as well. And I firmly believe that I can do very well in Quebec. I'm positive.
So your French is pretty good so far?
Well, it is. I mean, when I got into this race, I wasn't speaking much French at all. And now I'm at a position where I'm able to do interviews in French. Obviously, I'm learning, but many people have taken note of, wow, that guy's really learned that French pretty quick. And some have said that, given a year or two, I'll probably be better than the whole lot. And that was the Toronto Star that said that, so must be true.
Derek, our deficit is over $340 billion and our debt over $1 trillion. What's your plan to fix our fiscal mess and get us back in the black?
Well, there's no magical answer, but the answer is the same as it's always been. It means cutting government waste, and I've highlighted a bunch of things that I would cut. We fund the World Health Organization almost $1 billion. We fund foreign abortions, again, almost $1 billion. We have a media bailout for the mainstream media. All of these things and more need to be cut. We need to get our energy sector back on track. That means getting out of Paris Agreement, scrapping Bill C-69, C-48, and then we have to cut regulations and cut taxes for small business and entrepreneurs. And I make a distinction between Canadian small business and big business and international corporations. Not that they're all bad, but we need to focus on made in Canada, and I have a great plan to do that.
What plan do you have for our farmers here, especially in Alberta? A lot of the farming families are hurting right now with COVID and the fact that China's still not receiving Canadian canola.
Yeah, that's great. So, I mean, when it comes to China, we really have to play hardball, play tougher with them. And when it comes to our farmers, we need to remember that, our food supply needs to be a top priority. So I believe generally, yes, the government needs to cut waste. The government needs to cut, handouts to corporations. But when we're investing in farmers, when we're protecting our farmers, that's not handouts, that's not waste. So that's something that I'm in favor of.
The controversy surrounding the extradition of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou continues. Many argue that China arrested the two Canadians, Michael Spavor, Michael Kovrig, in retaliation to the arrest of Meng Wanzhou. Now, the PM has stated that he will not do a prisoner exchange because it'll make other Canadians' lives, it'll put their lives in jeopardy. So how can we safely bring home the two Michaels? I mean, Derek, they've been charged with spying and could face the death penalty.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Justin Trudeau on that in terms of we absolutely cannot do hostage diplomacy. We can't do a trade. Now, of course, he says that on one hand, and then he is doing everything, he's afraid to even use the word Taiwan in the House of Commons. So the Liberals have been extremely obsequious in relation to China. We need to take a new approach with China. We need to work with our allies. I mean, the United States right now has the guts, as it were, to stand up to China, and we need to do the same. I believe that we need to take Chinese infiltration, Communist Party linked Chinese infiltration seriously, and we've seen CSIS reports for the last couple of decades talking about money related to crime and money related to the kleptocracy of the Communist Party. Buying up our real estate, cozying up to municipal politicians, cozying up to even higher level politicians. We have to take this seriously and arrest anybody who is, basically spying for China on our territory.
Now let's talk about the relationship with the United States and how important that really is. Our biggest trading partner. How long should we keep the border closed to non-essential travel?
Well, here's the thing. I'm skeptical. And I know that the majority of Canadians would actually disagree with me, but I'm actually skeptical as to how useful a border closure is at this point. There's all kinds of Canadians. I have a friend here who has a good job in the States, and his family's here, and he's torn between two. I mean, if he goes to the States, he can't come back every weekend. He's got to quarantine when he gets there. He can't be coming back and forth. I believe that we need to have maybe not fully open borders right now, but I'm certainly skeptical as to a complete closure. And there's so many businesses that are dependent on tourists that are going to be just slammed this summer with what's going on. So, I of course promote safety and all these things, but playing it too safe has consequences as well.
So how can we really improve our relationship with the United States?
Well, I think really, I mean, if we take a look at how Justin Trudeau has reacted to Donald Trump, he said things behind his back. He's promoted his sort of left-wing causes at the expense of legitimate sort of trade discussions. I firmly believe that the United States can be our greatest friend. I've said we need to put more money into our military to meet our NATO commitments. I think if it was known and felt that Canada was pulling its weight in some of these agreements, we could get more, whether it's softwood lumber agreements, whether it's with our farming or other types of trade arrangements. I believe we can get better agreements and more sound concessions from the United States.
Conservative Party of Canada leadership candidate Derek Sloan, thanks for joining me today from Ontario.
Thank you.
Our next guest knows firsthand what it's like for life to take an unexpected turn. Ann Maines is the television host of A Better Us and the former host of 100 Huntley Street, which we air right here on Miracle Channel. And 1 year ago, Maines received a devastating phone call from her doctor informing her of a cancer diagnosis. And she's journaled her way through this journey over the past year and has now turned that journal into a devotional to help others. Joining me now from her home in Waterloo, Ontario is Ann Maines. Ann, welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you with us today.
Thank you, Jeanette. It is my privilege to be with you.
Now, you've had such a brave journey over the past year, but maybe take us back to that day that you found out you had cancer. Your husband was away that day, right? Maybe tell us the story.
Yes, he was away. Well, nothing prepares you for the phone call from the doctor. Ron was 2 hours away playing golf in a fundraising golf tournament, and I was all alone at home when the doctor called me that the results of a recent biopsy had come back. Now, I had had mammograms for years, faithfully, and they had always been fine, but this last mammogram was different. And so the doctor then sent me for further testing, and the biopsy then showed that there were cancer cells present. She was shocked, and I, of course, was shocked. After I hung up the phone with her, I didn't know what to do, Jeanette. I thought, do I call Ron? Do I let him know? Or do I give him one last day to just be carefree and normal? I thought, well, I'll just call him and kind of feel out the situation, just see what's going on. And so as soon as he answered the phone, he was laughing. And the first thing he said to me was, honey, I think I might have just won the putting competition. And my heart sunk. I thought, oh no, he's having such a good day. So I didn't know what to do, but I thought Ron would want to know. So he slipped away so we could chat, and I told him, and he said to me, honey, give me 10 minutes, let me get my golf clubs. I'm going to come home. I'll call you from the car. And so for the next hour and a half, basically, we talked and prayed and cried on the phone. And it was during the course of that conversation, Jeanette, that I said, I really feel like God wants me to journal my journey. There was no purpose for it. I just had that sense. And so he said to me, well, I'll be home in about 45 minutes. Let's hang up and you write your first journal entry. And that's what I did.
Oh, wow. So right there and then that led you to start journaling right away that very day. And it just you just kept going from there. Was it sort of a way to process what you were going through a little bit?
Exactly. That's exactly what was happening. I just sensed that God wanted me to write down what I was learning through this unexpected journey. Every time I journaled, every time I wrote a devotional, I started with where I was that day. From like a month after my diagnosis, I had surgery. A couple of weeks after that, it was revealed that I would need chemotherapy, which I totally did not expect. I didn't see that coming. In fact, when the doctor told me that, I literally doubled over in her office. I couldn't believe I was going to need chemotherapy. But you know what? It was just part of my journey. And as you can imagine, I suffered all the side effects that come with chemotherapy. I mean, I had severe nausea, severe fatigue, and I lost all of my hair. And as a woman, that's kind of hard to take. But in fact, I'm still regrowing it. I'm sporting my new wig here, just trying to feel as normal as possible. But throughout the whole journey, Jeanette, every milestone that I had, every dark night of the soul, I would just pick up my laptop and my Bible, and I would just start journaling. And it was through those journaling times that God really brought healing and comfort to my spirit.
Right. And this daily journaling you started actually publishing, right, on social media? So that's a very public forum to start your, share personal thoughts. So what was that like?
It is. Well, after I had written several devotionals and I just found such healing in them as I was writing them. I just felt God's Holy Spirit just bringing healing to my spirit. I started thinking, well, I know there's a lot of people out there that are hurting. This was last fall, and I thought if I can even help one person by sharing one of my devotionals on Facebook, then it would be worth it. And so I started doing that. I started just very timidly sharing here and there. And I was really surprised at the feedback I got. Before I knew it, I had thousands of people tracking with me in my devotionals, many of them writing back private messages to me, sharing their own difficult journey they were going through. And it wasn't always health related. Sometimes it was relationship or financial or whatever. But it was something difficult that they're going through. And many of them would say, Anne, these are so helpful. You need to consider putting them into a book. And so that's kind of where the idea for the book came from.
Right. So that came from people that were following you and you're like, hey, this is a good idea. So this led you to actually publish your journal entries into a book called Coffee with Him, Mornings with God on an Unexpected Journey, right? So it was released on June 10th of this year and it quickly became the #1 best-selling devotional on Amazon Canada. So congratulations on that, by the way. That's
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you. Jeanette, when God first led me to start writing these devotions over a year ago, there was no purpose for them. It was just me kind of stepping out in obedience saying, okay, God, if you want me to journal, if this is the best way you have me to heal through this journey, here I am, I'm going to do it. Little did I know what would happen as a result of the 31-day devotional that this process became. And I'm just so thankful to God that He was able to use the lessons that I learned, because there are so many dark nights of the soul when you're walking this kind of a journey. And especially now during COVID, there are so many dark nights of the soul for so many people. And so He knew even then, a year ago, that the lessons I was going to learn would be used to help other people now.
That's amazing. So now, to be clear, it's a devotional. It's not a biography or a memoir of your journey, right? So why don't you explain a little bit? Tell us about the book. What's in it?
Well, it's like I said, it's a 31-day devotional. The very first day, I encourage readers to just pick it up first thing in the morning, Coffee with Him. So grab your Bible and the book, the Coffee with Him book, and a cup of coffee, and just go somewhere private with the Lord. Have those few extra moments with Him before you start your day. That's what I'm encouraging readers to do. Each day is a very short reading. You can read it in less than 5 minutes. Each day ends with what I like to call sips to savor. So it's on the track with the coffee theme. And then, so those are questions that you ask yourself about the devotional. How can that relate to my life today? And then there's a prayer starter, where sometimes if you're in a difficult time, you really don't know what to say to God. I know I had lots of times like that through my journey, where you just kind of sit there and say, okay, God, I've got so many questions. I don't know what to say. I wrote just a very short prayer starter at the end of each day's devotional, where it just begins a conversation with the Lord based on what you just read in that day. And then there's a notes section I don't know about you, but I love taking notes when I'm going through a devotional. I like to journal, write down what I'm thinking, what's going through my mind as I'm reading what the author is saying and what the scriptures are saying. So that's basically the book. And the very first day of the 31 days is the very first devotional I wrote on that day, June the 10th, 2019, when my husband was still driving home to be with me. And that's how it starts and continues for 31 days.
It must have been hard for you to pick which 31 to put in your book, was it? How long did that take?
It was very hard because these are, like you said, Jeanette, these are so personal. And I share a lot in the book of my journey. I talk a lot about the day I lost my hair. Just a week into my second chemo treatment, I had 8 chemo treatments, 2 weeks apart, beginning the middle of September and finishing the week before Christmas. And just a week after my second chemo treatment, my hair started coming out in handfuls, like literally handfuls. And I knew that it was going to all come out, I was told. So I called my longtime friend and hairdresser, Ely, and I said, Ely, can you come to my house and shave my head? And so he did. He came, and I sat with my eyes closed, and I held my husband's hand, and I cried through most of it as Ely shaved my head. And that's one of the devotionals in the book, because it was during that time that I sensed God's presence in such a sweet way. You know, when our heart is broken, when we're going through something that we just did not see coming, it doesn't take God by surprise, and it doesn't take him unawares. He is with us. He is right there with us, holding us, if we'll only let him. And I don't know about you, Jeanette, but I found that throughout my life, in some of those darkest times, those are the times that you learn more and more about the character of God, the love of God, the depth of the intimacy he wants to have with us. There's a verse in Isaiah that I just love. It's Isaiah 45, verse 3. I think it's the NIV version. It says, God says to you and to me, he says, I will give you treasures in darkness, riches stored in secret places, so that you will know I am the Lord your God. And that says to me, as we are walking through those dark places, those dark times, not evil darkness, but confusion, where you're floored, you don't know what's going on. As we walk through those dark times, we're not alone. God is with us. And not only is he with us, he has gifts for us in that darkness that we can only receive as we walk through those dark times. And for each of us, they look different. Some of them are very obvious, and some of them are more subtle. But they're tailor-made for each of us on our journey.
Yeah. Now, speaking of your journey, obviously it's been with cancer, but obviously this devotional is for anyone going through any unexpected journey. And as you're just explaining all of that, that really makes sense to me. That any unexpected journey, someone could pick up your book and probably just get so much out of it.
And you know what? God's word is filled with promises to us that he is with us no matter what we are going through. And that's another part of the book is, as I was walking through this, my husband and I decided to call it a healing journey. So as I've been walking through this healing journey, there were so many Bible verses that just became so precious to me. So at the back of the book, I put over 100 of my favorite verses. So they're there for you if you're going through a difficult time. They're listed there because God's word is precious to us, and he promises to be with us no matter what we go through. If we'll only come to him, dig into his word, receive from him the healing and the comfort that he is offering to us.
Yeah. Now, since then, you've had more of a positive diagnosis, right? Tell us where you are right now.
Yes, I have. Earlier this year, the doctors pronounced me cancer-free.
Wow.
And I am so thankful for that. I'm still healing, as you can imagine, but I'm just so thankful that that is the direction my journey has taken. And I'm so excited to be able to share with others that God can be with you too, no matter what you're going through.
That's amazing. And I'm so happy to hear that you are cancer-free, so you are in remission now.
Yes,
That's
yes.
wonderful. Where can people find your devotional, Anne?
Well, we have set up a very easy website for anyone. If you want to get my book, it's coffeewithhim.ca. Coffeewithhim.ca, and that'll link you to exactly where you can get the book.
What has been the feedback so far from people?
Oh, it's been amazing. There have been so many people who have sent me private messages saying the devotionals in the book are meeting them exactly where they are. Many have said they are in the middle of a cancer journey. Many have said they've come through the other side. But I'm amazed, Jeanette, how many people are relating to the book that aren't having a health crisis. I heard from a lady last week. Her husband was just last week killed in a motorcycle accident, and she had just started reading my book, and she said that it's ministering to her. And so I am just so thankful to God that He is using me, of all people, to be able to reach out to them and bring His love and His healing and His comfort to them.
That's amazing. You guys are just going through such a big journey together. And your husband, Ron, has been with you through this the whole way.
Every step of the way. Yeah, Ron, he went with me to every chemo treatment. He was there holding my hand. He's been my rock. He likes to say he's my rock with a lowercase r, because Jesus is my rock with the uppercase R.
Aw. Well, and it looks like we are out of time. Unfortunately, I could go on talking to you all day. But Anne Mays, television host of Better With Us, and now author of Coffee with Him, Mornings with God on an Unexpected Journey. Anne, it's been wonderful having you on the show. And all the best to you and your husband as you continue to go through this journey together.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. It's been my pleasure.
As the dust settles and economies slowly reopen after months of COVID-19 restrictions, those in developing nations are still dealing with rising numbers of coronavirus cases. Compassion Canada is a charitable organization committed to helping children and their families in these developing nations to prosper and live in health during the crisis. Joining me now to talk about it is the President and CEO of Compassion Canada, Alison Alley. Welcome back to BCN, Alison.
Thank you, Hal. It's great to be with you again.
Alison, how has COVID-19 really impacted your group, Compassion Canada?
Yeah, well, Compassion works in 37 countries, in low, middle, and high-income economies and countries. And this pandemic has impacted every single location we work, right? There's a reason why we call it a virus that knows no borders. And so, not dissimilar to in Canada, government quarantines were put in place in every area we work. Our offices were closed and staff were sent to work from home overnight around the globe. And so our focus since then as global leaders has been, how can we come together and adapt and respond to not just the changing needs of kids living in poverty, but the critical and increasing needs that they're facing?
So what hurdles specifically have children and families living in poverty really come up against?
Yeah, so for kids and families living in extreme poverty, everything about COVID-19 is magnified for them. The risk, the fear, the uncertainty, the life and death reality that they face. Because many of the families that we serve have no safety net, right? So their survival is on the line when something like a health or an economic crisis hits. Many of them are day laborers, which means if they're unable to go out and earn a daily wage, they're unable to put food on their table at night. But beyond that, experts are also talking about the cascading effects of this pandemic. We anticipate hunger may double by the end of the year. We see the pandemic triggering, an increase in preventable diseases like malaria and measles. And really, it could undo more than 10 years of progress towards combating poverty. And so this is a crisis for the world's poor, unlike anything we've ever seen.
Alison, have staff members been able to visit the homes of the sponsored kids? And if so, what measures have they taken to really prevent the spread of COVID-19?
Yeah, our program has always been locally led and contextualized with a focus on knowing, loving, and protecting kids based on their unique needs and the unique challenges that they face. But in this season, as you can imagine, our staff and our partners are having to be more creative and adaptive than they've ever had to be in how they go about doing that. But they're getting in front of them. They're visiting their homes when they're able to do that. They're delivering food and hygiene kits. They're making mask and hand sanitizer, educating communities through flyers and digital campaigns. And of course, a critical part of our work right now is trauma counseling and child protection, because when there's crisis in the home and when there's instability, kids are often the ones that are the most impacted as violence in the home increases. So we're working on that as well, of course.
Can you comment on the strain this crisis has had specifically on medical services in some of these developing countries?
Yeah, the countries that we work in, Hal, already have fragile and strained medical and health systems. So, as you can imagine, when you add COVID-19 to the picture, it becomes even more critical because they have to choose where to allocate their already limited resources. It's not dissimilar to what we saw during the Ebola epidemic when West African countries had no choice but to really devote their limited resources to battling the deadly disease. But it meant that other important life saving interventions like basic vaccinations or maternal health were neglected. And that basically led to a rise in maternal deaths. And so it is dire. It's staggering how under resourced they are and the implication of that. But actually, it's interesting timing because I was just on a call with our National Director of Compassion Ecuador right before talking to you, Hal. And he had talked about how, in addition to all the ways that they're helping kids and families access medical services or give them access to private hospital care if needed, they've also created a new telehealth program. And so they've created this phone number similar to telehealth that we would have, that these kids and families can call to access a network of doctors and practitioners and counselors. But what I love about this is that some of those medical professionals are former sponsored children who have gone through our leadership development program and are now doctors and nurses. So incredible work's being done.
Wow, great success stories. Nice to hear that. Now, are cases of the virus, Allison, increasing or decreasing in some of these developing nations?
Yeah, the spread and the impact of the virus is certainly different everywhere that we work, but it is definitely continuing to increase. Developing countries now account for 3/4 of the new daily cases that are being reported. But of course, we know that with the limitations of testing in those contexts, the numbers are much, much higher. But it is increasing the fastest in Latin America right now, faster than anywhere in the world. We happen to work in Brazil, which, if you're following the news, that's now become one of the new epicenters of the pandemic, right? And they're anticipating that its numbers are going to surpass the United States in the coming weeks. For us, we've got our eye on the fact that it's spreading into the Northeast region, which is where most of the country's impoverished regions are. And it's also moving into indigenous territories in the Amazon, which, as you can imagine, we were just talking about limited medical care. That would be most certainly the case there.
So how about education? Are people able to get out to some of these regions, the far remote regions of the Amazon or maybe in Latin America, and explaining that, social distancing, physical distancing is important, not to spread the virus, the masks and so forth?
Yeah, I mean that's the challenge. It's education is always a struggle. First of all, in getting to the remote regions, as you said, but even those who have access to education, formal education, are no longer able to go. So for us as an organization, we have been working as it relates to just healthcare and prevention education to provide that in creative ways. We have different social media and digital campaigns. We've been putting flyers up in communities, but we also have been creating videos and FaceTime calls with students who have been preparing, for example, for end of year exams or for different schoolwork. We've ensured to get in front of them and support them in their more formal academic and educational needs as well.
Now, Compassion Canada also has this thing called We Rise as One initiative, helping out in some of these developing countries. Allison, let's chit-chat a bit about that.
Yeah, well, ultimately, we feel like a global crisis warrants a global response. And so our worldwide compassion family has come together for the first time to launch a global fundraising campaign to help the most critically vulnerable children and families. And so we're inviting exactly that, folks around the globe to join us and to rise as one, to lift up their voice, to give their influence, but also to respond practically to those who so desperately need it. So specifically how we're raising funds to give at-risk children, families, and communities the health and stability they need through hygiene, food, and shelter.
What is in some of these kits actually that has the food and hygiene?
Yeah, so for hygiene, it would include really practical things like hand sanitizer, soap, vitamins, supplements, cleaning supplies, protective masks, and of course, as we talked about education, the tools on how to use it and why it's important. But we also have these food kits that we're handing out. And it's probably worth noting that food security is becoming one of the most prominent and severe risks, not just for the people that we serve, but for those experiencing COVID-19 in these low-income economies. Because as I said, they're unable to make income, which makes them unable to provide food, but also how we're seeing already that global supply chains are starting to break down. When there's food shortages and shortage of supply, we know that the price goes up, which is just magnifying and intensifying the need for these families. So for us, we are providing practical kits that include things like rice and eggs and milk and corn and other non-perishables. While also a large part of our work is on helping pregnant and new moms. And so we ensure that these pregnant and nursing mothers have the nutrition and supplements that they need as well.
You know, they sound fairly helpful. Will Compassion continue to give out the kits after the coronavirus crisis?
Yeah, I mean, this is a short-term relief that we're doing as part of our long-term sustainable development efforts. And so we always focus on the holistic well-being of the kids that we serve. We work to grow them spiritually, socially, physically, and cognitively. And therefore, things like hygiene and food and stability are a regular part of what we do. But as we move forward and enter new phases of development, the way that we offer them and how we do it will continue to change based on their unique needs and the opportunities around them.
You know, Allison, even before we've ever heard of COVID-19, your organization was involved in something called holistic child development work. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, so that recognizes that we as human beings are whole beings, and we can so often think of poverty as just an economic challenge that requires a financial response. But we, particularly as a faith-based organization, recognize that not dissimilar to how Jesus grew, it says in Luke 2:52 that Jesus grew in wisdom, in stature, in favor with God, and in favor with man. We follow that model and develop kids spiritually, socially, physically, and cognitively so they can really flourish into their full God-given potential and contribute wholly to the community around them.
Let's talk more specifically now about how Compassion Canada works. On your website, you say that we shouldn't respond to poverty by just handing out food and Bibles, correct?
Yeah, you know, we really think that it's important, first of all, to have a long-term model that prioritizes and highlights the local, national people. And so I think the first thing to understand, and I will answer your question more directly, but the first thing is we work only with national offices and partner with local churches who have been there before Compassion, will be there after Compassion, and really know the names and the faces and the needs of their communities. And because of that, they understand that poverty is complex, development is complex, and not dissimilar to how we think about our needs, Hal, the needs of our kids, the needs of our society. They work to address all of those needs as well and say, yeah, there's a physical component, but there's also social, interpersonal, there's family needs, there's community needs. And so they work to grow kids holistically in that context in appropriate ways.
Now we pray that God would bless and support various nonprofits, including your own, which honor him and bring him glory. How can our viewers bless you? What are you specifically needing help with? Is it maybe volunteers?
Yeah, well, first of all, we appreciate your prayer. There's so much need, as you can imagine, and we are facing an incredible amount of cases in our beneficiaries and their families, and of course are starting to encounter deaths. of the kids that we serve or of our frontline partners and volunteers. So pray for them and the impact on their family. But specifically, absolutely, we're always looking for volunteers. And actually, we launched this We Rise as One campaign with our volunteers, which are really close family members of our organization, just last night. And so you can check out different volunteer opportunities on our website, which is compassion.ca.
Yes, for more information, definitely check out that website and continue with the great work around the world. Great job, Allison.
Thank you so much, Hal. Appreciate your time.
Allison Alley, President and CEO of Compassion Canada. On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.